Where do you learn empathy? At home? At school? Is it even in the curriculum? If you're a teacher or a homeschooler, here's study materials ready-made, and it's free and accredited. Teach Kind, next on the PETA Podcast. Welcome to the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo, your host for this behind-the-scenes look at PETA, the largest animal rights organization in the world. On today's episode, the debate over COVID-era learning at school, remotely, or hybrid is still being waged, but when things settle down, parents and teachers will need to shift their focus on what to teach their children. After seeing world leaders in action, perhaps besides reading, writing, and arithmetic, there's room for empathy and kindness. For nearly 15 years, PETA has provided teachers and homeschoolers a Teach Kind syllabus that ranges from science to current events to the arts, all of it approved and within the core curriculum guidelines for K-12. Little wonder more than 3,600 Teach Kind materials have been ordered for use all over the country. Schools in Florida, New York, Connecticut, Mississippi have had continued engagement through the years, and it's all free. Lisbet Chiraboga is the program manager of Teach Kind, a former teacher in the South Bronx of New York. She said the program is gearing up for even more online learning as families and schools face the pandemic, and there's even been a definite uptick in orders as educators seek new learning tools. My interview with Lisbet Chiraboga of Teach Kind on the PETA Podcast. When you were a teacher in New York, boy, how tough was that to be a teacher in New York City?
Well, I loved it. I loved teaching. I used to teach in the South Bronx, and the kids are so wonderful. The families are wonderful. It's really the system that that fails us, and that's really mostly the problem. But one thing I always found, I always connected with students, and I worked at the elementary level. I taught students in grades kindergarten to fifth grade. I always connected with them on our love for animals, because I've never come across a child that didn't care about animals at some level. So even the kids with the hardest home lives and that on the face would seem very hardened, there was always a soft spot for animals that you could tap into to unleash their empathy, really. So it was beautiful. And now it's so exciting for me to work at PETA, because now I get to work nationally with teachers and share my experiences teaching humane education and fostering compassion for animals. Because it's really a win-win for everyone. It's a win for the animals. It's a win for students because it fosters pro-social behavior and more empathy. And it's a win for teachers because, again, it fosters pro-social behavior. And we have such issues with bullying and antisocial behavior. So it's a wonderful way to foster empathy and bring out more empathetic behavior in children with their peers.
So when you think back to your days as a teacher and you see the news and you see what they must be going through, I mean, not just in New York City, but everywhere, they're debating, should I go back? Are we a hybrid? Are we online only? And you see you're in this particular situation now at PETA where you can bring a component that you found was maybe missing, but now do you see where there's an opportunity for what you do at Teach Kind to go in there in the schools? And do you think it could be done in a hybrid way, in online and live? Or how do you view this whole situation that we're in now in terms of what you're teaching and getting that message across to students?
Well, Teach Kind has been working hard all summer to create even more online resources. So there's definitely an opportunity here, because many times parents and teachers have to pay for resources to use virtually, and all our materials and resources and guidance is completely free.
Wait, hold on a second. Free. It's
Free. Yes. We're former classroom teachers with experience in providing humane education and teaching children about compassion for animals, and we can help teachers, homeschoolers, parents that are, doing the at-home learning thing. We can help you.
So even if you're formally within a district, or within a system as a teacher, or if you're at home and you're just looking for something that may not be part of the official curriculum, but you want to have something else to teach your kid, you're a parent who's under stress and you need one more thing to give your kid online, TeachKind is an option.
TeachKind is it. And the wonderful thing is, even though humane education resources aren't, quote, part of an official curriculum, all our activities, all our lessons are aligned with Common Core standards. So you can foster compassion at the same time that you're keeping students' academic skills sharp.
So not a waste of time, officially sanctioned by all the different standards. You are the manager of this very unique program, which is a division of PETA that maybe some people don't know about. But tell us more about TeachKind. Tell us what you do exactly and why it's so important.
Yeah, so TeachKind, again, since we're all former classroom teachers, we help teachers incorporate compassion for animals into their curriculum. We also work with a lot of homeschooling groups, and now we're working with a lot of parents. So parents can get a lot from our resources because we're giving them step-by-step directions and guides for how to use these types of resources. And it's really, again, a win-win for everyone. Kids are naturally interested in animals. So parents and teachers can harness this interest to engage even the most reluctant learners. And I've seen that firsthand throughout my entire teaching career. So by teaching about helping animals and preventing suffering, parents and teachers can not only motivate students academically, they can also improve their social interactions, all while fostering empathy for other species. It's so important for kids to feel like they still have control over some things, such as how they treat others, including animals. Now,
is there an overall message that TeachKind promotes for teachers and for students?
We find common ground with schools. Before school shutdowns, we did go to schools to provide training for teachers in their schools, classroom presentations as well. And there's no agenda. I guess you would say the only agenda is fostering compassion in children via their love, their natural affinity for animals. And I've never met an educator or a parent that can't get on board with that.
Tell me also, since you were a teacher, tell me more about your background and how that has helped you in creating the materials, and tell me why or if the things that you're creating come out of a sense that you were in the classroom for 12 years and you know what was missing and you know what they need. So tell me about that.
Being former teachers, we understand the school environment, what's expected from children, from the students in grades K-12, as well as what the expectations on teachers. So one of my favorite things that we've created, my favorite resources, are our rescue stories comprehension worksheets. When I was a teacher, I always wound up rescuing animals, basically in the school neighborhood, from squirrels to even a rooster and a hen. And I would always involve the children in the rescue, as well as tell them the story about it. And I would share with them rescue stories, that I saw online as well. So all teachers and parents can do this. And what it does is it brings children into the world of what's happening to animals in a gentle way. But then there's always a happy ending. So our rescue stories comprehension worksheets you can find at teachkind.org. We have them for all grade levels, K-2, 3-5, 6-8, 9-12. And it will have a student text with about a real story of a PETA rescue. For example, there was a puppy named Christmas who was rescued from a remote island in the Philippines with lice and infected open wounds. We have another story about Mayflower, the turkey rescued from slaughter right before Thanksgiving. We include key vocabulary words and questions to encourage inferential thinking. So again, you're working on academic skills at the same time as you're developing compassion in children.
And the students take an active role, right? I mean, they haven't. There must be some kind of interactivity where they might have a decision to make.
The wonderful thing about children is that they're not as jaded as adults. So as soon as they hear that animals need help, they want to roll up their sleeves and get started and find out what we can do. So that's the wonderful thing about working with children, is that there's no hesitation there. They love animals and they want to do something to help. So if you include real life animal issues into the teaching of children, and you also help them understand ways to help, whether it's a fundraiser, speaking out, whatever way it is, that will really engage children. And I've worked with students where they've taken that to the next level and it continued their own learning at home because they're so engaged and they're so impassioned. And I've seen reluctant readers become voracious readers because they learned about the plight of dogs chained 24 hours a day outside, or that elephants are going to be extinct in their lifetime if society doesn't stop killing them. So we, as educators, we can just tap into that thing because that natural affinity is already there.
Why do you suppose there's that feeling that what you feel on one level toward animals might create that spark that gives one some kind of academic motivation to learn more and do more?
Well, I think that, when you're going through school and you're in, could be kindergarten to 12th grade, you're open to learning, probably a little bit more than, many adults after their schooling. And you want to know more. And especially nowadays, we're teaching Generation Z in schools right now. And we've seen how they came out for the climate march not too long ago. They want to know the truth. They want to know what's happening in the world, and they want to take action. So they are a little different from millennials and older people. Because this generation wants to take action, and we can harness that energy to, help them, motivate them academically as well.
Now, without the kind of things that you have created, and without, what did they have prior? What was there for them to learn any of this before TeachKind? Was there anything, or how was it done?
Well, TeachKind has been around for about 15 years. We have had our signature elementary curriculum available called Share the World. It's been available for quite a few years. We have revamped it in recent years to again align it with Common Core standards and just update it. I really couldn't tell you what was out there before. I think it was, generally up to the teacher if they were interested, but in animal issues. But what we try to impress upon all teachers is that all students, all children deserve this kind of education, whether you're interested in animal issues or not. And I've worked with many teachers that didn't really care about animal issues, but they were, because they were a good teacher, they took the resources I gave them and worked with the students on, with those resources, because as a good teacher, what motivates your students and how you can harness more motivation and that academic energy from students.
Now, is there any chance that you might have come across some teachers who might look at this as being frivolous or non-essential or just not as important as some, reading, writing, arithmetic, right? I'm sure you have those folks who are just strict in that regard. do you have some people who say, "Oh, you're on some kind of left-wing agenda here. This is not what we want in our schools"?
Well, that's why we really marry the academics with the compassion, because, as former classroom teachers, we know that there's no extra time in the day to do something else that's not part of the curriculum. So again, we know that teachers are expected to teach certain reading and writing skills. So we incorporate all of those things into the resources that we provide. So in the time I've been at PETA, I haven't met any educators that I wasn't able to convince, very easily, that it's a win-win for everyone to include these resources, because the resources we create are educationally sound. They're aligned to Common Core standards. So using them really, is kind of a no-brainer.
Now, are you doing any lesson plans or work to stop dissection of animals, or on the science realm, anything like that?
Absolutely. We're promoting a lot of virtual dissection resources. So again, you can go to teachkind.org to find out about all of that. We are also working with some whole school districts in California who have now seen the light since everything's gone virtual, that it makes more sense and it's more cost efficient as well, which is a big thing for school districts, to have virtual dissection. And there's plenty of research to show that virtual dissection resources are on par, the students' learning is on par, and their outcomes are on par with the physical dissection. And then you don't have all the formaldehyde and the negatives that go along with it as well, well as not hurting any animals.
I remember formaldehyde from science courses in fourth grade. I wasn't science oriented in later years, but early on it was an elective. So I electively touched formaldehyde, and they never told me how dangerous it was. And there was, look at the snakes and the salamanders in the jars with the formaldehyde, and it smells fun. They weren't thinking about that back in my day, and we cut up flatworms and all that sort of thing. And I'm sure now there are alternatives to those kind of science, curricula that are out there, right?
Absolutely. And another thing that we try to impress on educators that they don't think of very often is how many students you're turning off to the sciences because they have an ethical problem with dissecting animals that have been killed, I know personally some people who were very interested in the sciences, and because they had to dissect and they didn't speak up. So it's not always the students that speak up that you're turning off to the sciences. And and especially girls, and we need more of them in STEM. So, we try to help educators understand that there's a lot of students that you're turning off to the sciences in that way. And there's also been a revolutionary new item that's come on the market called Sin Frog.
Oh, yeah.
That's an actual anatomically correct model of a frog to dissect. And so they've used that. They came out with that not too long ago. And, students love it. Teachers love it because, it hits all the marks, for learning and for outcomes. And the kids, there's no ethical consideration there.
And certainly now, because it's you could do things online, you're pandemic ready right now.
Yeah.
And so tell me more about how TeachKind is dealing with the pandemic throughout the entire K through 12 curriculum. I mean, it seems that schools are still debating whether to open, whether to go hybrid, whether to go solely online. What is your view about whether, I guess you don't take a stand on whether schools should open or reopen, do you?
Well, yes, I'll leave that up to school officials to decide that. But I will say we have had a huge uptick in parents homeschooling who want our resources. So we are constantly looking for ways to support parents who are going to either keep their child at home, even if their schools are reopening, or are going to go full on homeschool. And, before the pandemic, we had a lot of homeschool parents reach out to us for different resources. We even created some resources specifically for some homeschool parents. One homeschool parent had written to us saying that she wanted a worksheet about exactly what a vegan was for her children, so she could give that to her children, and she had all different age levels. So we created that, and we have that on our website for free. So we love homeschoolers. If you're homeschooling your own child, you have a lot more freedom to incorporate different kinds of materials. So we've also heard about how hard the virtual learning environment has been for special needs children and for English language learners. And so we have information on our website at teachkind.org that specifically addresses how to use our humane education materials that will really engage these types of learners.
So no child literally is left behind when it comes to humane education. What are the most popular programs you have? Give some examples to some of the things that are, say, number one, the favorites of school districts.
Our Share the World program, again, that I mentioned, which is our signature elementary program, it includes a 23-minute video of inspiring animal footage. It focuses on the golden rule: treat others the way you want to be treated, include animals in that as well. We have lessons for grades K to 2 and 3 to 5, and we've digitized all the worksheets so it can be completed online. And again, you're keeping students' academic skills sharp because all the lessons align to Common Core standards, and it promotes compassion for animals. We also have a new lesson called Sheldon Here's a Squeak, which includes a script for Reader's Theater and lots of directions for how to do shadow theater with puppets at home with your child using ready, easy to find materials. So a lot of things to engage children because that's going to be the most difficult thing, like keeping children engaged while they're at home or while they're learning virtually with the school. So I just would like to impress upon educators that we already know that kids love animals. So let's, harness that, you can use that to engage them and, hit all the benchmarks for, what you're expected to do as well.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a full range there from dissection. You've got the arts, you've got readers theater, you've got people cutting up little construction paper things so they can form sets of things. I mean, it's comprehensive, and once again, it's all approved and accredited systems would all acknowledge the learning that takes place, right? I mean, no one would say, "Oh, that's a waste of time," or "That's not that does not fall under our standards."
Exactly. You can if you're an educator, you can easily see the types of objectives, academic and emotional that you can hit with our different lessons. And again, we have lessons not just for elementary, but for middle school and high school as well. We even have one for high school that's about the pandemic to help high schoolers really engage in some higher order learning, to think about why the pandemic happened, how we can prevent these types of global pandemics that have started from the use of animals in the future. So, so I would definitely encourage any educators to use those types of materials because, again, it's very engaging for students.
And it sounds relevant, too. I mean, in that discussion that you have, I guess it's open-ended, right? I mean, there's no answer as to why it happened, but where are the students led, or how?
Well, they synthesize the information that's out there, because the information out there can be overwhelming. So we take them step by step through, in that particular lesson, through what has happened, what is actual, historical information, and then just ask them to think about what are one of the things we ask them to think about and journal about is what are our responsibilities to our family, to our community, to our society, and those kinds of open up those kinds of big questions for students to think about.
So this would be ideal for, say, junior high or high school social studies class or a history class. I mean, we're living in historic times, and 20 years from now, you'll say, what was that lesson plan that I got from TeachKind that helped me understand why I compost in my yard and have solar panels, and why I'm kind to animals and why I'm vegan? Maybe. I mean, maybe that's the result. Is that the result?
It could be. It's up to the child. Mm-hmm.
And because it's up to the child, what are some stories you can share about what the students who you've worked with, and I imagine you've worked some live as well as some online. What are some stories you can share about how students have reacted to this kind of syllabus and this kind of learning?
Well, I can remember I had a kindergarten student one year who had a rough home life. His father had been incarcerated. His mother was away a lot. Very rough exterior. And but his love for animals shined through. One time he had the whole class watching over an army of ants at the school picnic, just so they could protect them. And he did the same thing on the playground with pigeons, protecting pigeons. So I gave him an award at the end of the school year for the best animal protector. But he had a lot of issues dealing with his peers, so he would get angry a lot. And I would always remind him about, remember how you feel about the ants and the pigeons and the other animals? Well, you can feel, you can think and feel that way about, your classmates as well. And even at that young age, he started to get it. So just imagine if every year from grades kindergarten to 12, you're reinforcing that kind of thinking in children. And again, I worked in the Bronx in a heavy gang area. Kids were recruited right out of elementary school.
This kid, the kindergartner, I mean, he was kind of the rat, or not the rats, but to the ants. Have you been able to track him and see how he's developed? Because this thing has to be a constant thing, right? I mean, it does.
And, he was in this school a few more years, so I was able to, keep connected with him. Unfortunately, he moved away, but I would, constantly be talking to him about it. Because again, your how you treat others is associated with how you treat animals and how you feel about animals. So, I would just hope that he would continue that and always remember.
Well, you
remember that? Yeah.
You planted the seed. And so that was a kind of an origin story, we hope, that stays and develops. Tell me that you had a second story.
Yeah. And just, to add a little bit to that, as a teacher, that's what you do, is plant seeds. You're not always going to know where they sprout, but you can feel good at planting some really good seeds. Yes. Yeah. So my second story about the impact of, lessons on compassion for animals happened in a 5th grade classroom when I was showing a video about a puppy mill rescue. So these dogs had been kept in cages that were rusted shut, and they were finally, being rescued from that misery. And after I turned off the video, and this was a rough group, a rough class, especially some of the boys. They lived in the projects. They had rough lives. So they weren't always comfortable with showing their emotions. So after the video, we turned off the video. A boy raised his hand and started making fun of another boy who was crying during the video. So I just gently said, that's okay, because it made me cry. It just shows that you were compassionate. And no sooner did I say that, did about 5, 6 other hands go up to say that they were crying during the video as well. And when I reflected on that, I realized that these children who have hard lives at home can't always show, they don't always have a safe place to show their emotions. So what we did in that moment was create a safe space for them to be able to show that they care. And that was a beautiful thing.
Well, and the courage to say that, or to admit that to your peers who, you know, who you show a different thing on the street, in the schoolyard, you know, on the subway. I mean, you did create that safe space.
And what I like to impress upon educators is that you can do that too. This wasn't just, you know, a coincidence or a fluke thing. That's the beautiful thing that can happen with incorporating lessons on compassion for animals. It helps children too.
So the children are transformed. You're saying the teachers can be transformed, but certainly after 12 years teaching in the Bronx and the New York City schools and 3 years working at PETA, you've been transformed somewhat, no?
Yes, I get more and more excited each day because I see teachers around the country, teachers and parents around the country, just doing amazing things with children. I see children doing amazing things that I wish I had thought to do when I was their age. Just not too long ago, here locally in Virginia Beach, there was a 6-year-old girl who her grandmother showed her some videos about dogs that were rescued from a fire, and the firefighters put the oxygen mask on the dogs. And the little girl learned that not all fire departments have these oxygen masks. So she made the connection that, oh, that means that sometimes dogs couldn't be saved. So she put together a lemonade stand and raised enough money to get to buy these oxygen masks for multiple fire stations. So we gave her an award for that. 6 years old. Huh. This is what this generation wants to do and what they can do.
And if provided with the kind of curricula that helps them develop, like the kind of things that you have at TeachKind, they might reach their full potential.
Absolutely. I've seen children be completely transformed, learning, harnessing their passion to help animals, you know, creating, especially, I worked with a lot of English language learners, and it helps them, you know, with their oral language, because develop their oral language, because, you know, one thing that children, you know, who are new to this country, new to this language, they're afraid to speak in front of their peers. But I had one student in a 4th grade classroom who had just come here from the Dominican Republic. We read an article in a kids magazine about how gopher tortoises sometimes suffer and die because people build over their homes, and there was no law against this. So she felt she had to do something. So she created a whole presentation for the class and other classes to tell them to speak up for the gopher tortoises. And again, there's so many examples of how helping children learn about what's happening to animals in a gentle way in the world, and then helping them, you know, to understand what they can do to help is a win-win for everyone.
And in the absence of you passing on that story to this little girl, she may not have had the opportunity to experience that connection until who knows when in her life, right?
That's very possible. Yeah, I would hope that wouldn't be the case, but yeah. So this is why we focus on teachers and on educators, because TeachKind may not be able to visit every classroom in the country, but we can reach every teacher.
And how many of those are out there that you have to speak to yet?
Oh, there's still a few more. But one thing that people listeners can do is to get inspired is go to teachkind.org and read about the inspiring teachers that we profile doing amazing things in their classrooms. We have a teacher appreciation contest every year, and our winners are profiled on our website. They do amazing things like, they have great after school clubs that, volunteer at sanctuaries or, just to, get vegan options in their cafeteria. They incorporate animal rights directly into the curriculum. Always, being able to justify how it's tied to the curriculum.
All right, give one shout out to the most inspiring teacher during the pandemic that you've dealt with. That you're just excited that they've discovered the program and that they're going to implement it.
Well, I'll give a shout out to our most recent winner of the Teacher Appreciation Contest, Nina Otazo, who is in Houston, Texas. So. Not always a place one would think that a lot of humane education and forward thinking, like vegan thinking is going on, but she has a vegan after school club with her students who are very active. She's always incorporating looking for more ways to incorporate anti-speciesist information into the curriculum, and always with the thought of how this will engage children, how it's tied to the curriculum, how it's justified to discuss, these types of issues. Nina Otazo. She's a high school English teacher in Houston, Texas.
Trying to say, stay away from the pork ribs, go with the vegan ribs. I live
and
in
she always has vegan food available for her students to try in her classroom. Mm-hmm.
That's great. Well, I lived in Houston. I know the kind of place that is. So it's that would be, when I was there, it would have been blasphemy. But now it's kind of like an opening of a door that students can go through. And it's all because of the kind of program that you represent with TeachKind. So Lisbet Chiraboga, thank you very much for taking the time here on the PETA Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Emil. It was a pleasure.
Lisbet Chiraboga, Program Manager of PETA's TeachKind. Teach empathy, kindness. Need materials? Go to PETA.org to find out more about their free lessons. That's PETA.org. And that's our show for this time. Contact us at PETA.org. You can find me on Twitter at Emil Amok, that's EMILAMOK, or on amok.com, or see my work at the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund website. That's at ALDEF, AALDEF.org/blog. Once again, thank you for listening. Check out all our episodes on Apple Podcasts, where you can rate and review the show. It helps get the word out about the issues you care about. And don't forget, you can help the animals and PETA, especially if you have Amazon's Alexa. Just say, Alexa, donate to PETA. Our music is provided by CarbonWorks. Check them out on YouTube. And join us again next time for more insight into animal rights and the fight for a cruelty-free world on the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo.